Hey y'all. Today I figured I'd talk to you about the birch. It is, I guess it's the 19th or 20th of October, and we're already getting into the 30s, so it won't be long before this tree loses its leaves. And this is pretty much my last chance. So, first of all, let's look at a birch. All right, this is the twig of the birch tree. You will notice the leaves are alternate, okay? That's what alternate means. Opposite leaves are side by side. They are dentate, meaning they have little teeth on the ends, all right? And that's probably not the main way people identify birch trees. The birch, especially, has a papery like bark that peels off. And in the early days of the country, a lot of people used to use it for writing paper. The silver birch has a silvery bark. Very easy tree to identify. There's a black birch, there's several birches, and they're pretty common throughout the country. All right, so as far as the medicinal uses, I'm going to read for you a little passage from my book, the Medicinal Trees of the American South. And let's see. I said in this book, which you can buy on Amazon or from me directly, of course, birch has a long use both in herbal medicine and as a beverage. The tips of birch twigs and the bark can be gathered in the spring and used to make birch beer. That was very popular in early America. It has a wintergreen-like flavor. Birch can also be tapped like maple to gather the sweet sap as it rises. This quality made birch a veritable beer plant as it supplied its own water, sugar, and flavoring. All that was needed to turn it into beer was yeast, and wild yeast are not only in the air, but would be on the birch twigs themselves. In a time when clean, drinkable water was scarce, such low alcohol beers and wines were essential to survival. And let me go ahead and show you real quick. You may notice on the leaves there are some little, like, kind of white spots. And let me double check. Sometimes that can be an insect nest, but yeah, well, actually, a couple of them are. Some of them are actually wild yeast. Um, we seem to have a little larvae right here coming out of these that are slightly raised and have a little gray center. But up here, wild yeast. That's how nature works. All right, as far as medicinal qualities, the bark, leaves, twigs, buds, and shoots of birch are used medicinally. The bark is anti-inflammatory and helps break a fever. It stimulates bile. The bark is astringent. The sap is diuretic. The shoots are laxative. Birch has been used for fevers and colds as an aid to digestion for skin conditions such as eczema and psoriasis, rheumatism and arthritis, gout, fluid retention, kidney stones, wounds, and sores. So this is an incredibly medicinal tree. In fact, most of the wintergreen oil that was originally distilled from the wintergreen plant um, eventually began to be made from birch. Birch also has qualities that are very similar to aspirin or salicylic acid, like a willow tree does. So this tree would be good for colds. It's good for aches and pains. It's good for all manner of things. And going way back, we're talking John Gerard in the 1500s in England. Well, he actually quoted Pliny, Pliny the Elder in ancient Greece, talking about it. And then Culpeper, writing in the 1600s, he said it was good for kidneys and bladder and also good for sore mouths. Miss Greaves wrote all about it in the 1930s. The sap is diuretic. Um, Birch tree is good for gout, rheumatism, dropsy. It's a reliable solvent of the stone of the kidneys. So you can see this was just a very useful plant. An Irish herbal, which was written in the 1700s, maybe around 1800, says that the liquid is drained off this tree in the springtime is good for dispelling urinary disorders like stones, pains, and bleeding. A decoction of the leaves when drunk is considered good for scurvy. Uh, Father Kunzel wrote about the birch tree. Brother Aloysius wrote about the birch tree. Brother Aloysius said it was good for people who suffer from nerves or dropsy. Dropsy is extreme water retention. Basically when someone's legs get so swollen and puffed up, they have to have a diuretic to get the fluid off. Um, let's see. Father Kunzel said if he said it was good for rheumatism. And he said that drank daily a tea made from birch leaves, meadowsweet, and spiny rest harrow and lady's bed straw. About a sip an hour. Well, birch tree, as I said, has the oil in it similar to wintergreen and also very similar to salicylic acid. So does the meadowsweet. Meadowsweet is a good source of the salicylic acid, which is the original aspirin. And let me see if I can find a Native American use, if possible, because there's so many birches in this country. Well, speaking of this country, Dr. Thompson of the Thomsonian School of Herbal Medicine, late 1800s, early 1900s, said a tea of this bark is useful in curing all complaints of the bowels and to remove obstructions. It is also useful in dysentery. This tea, made with peach meats or cherry stone meats, so peaches or cherries, into a syrup, and he would actually be talking seed. And this is kind of interesting because the cherry seed and the peach seed actually contain a little arsenic. Well, it's kind of antispasmodic, so that's where he was going with that. So this isn't the cherry fruit or the peach tree fruit, but it's actually the meat of the nut. And if you ever look at a nut, it's very much like an almond. You know, peaches and almonds are very closely related plants. Anyway, he says it's good for, um, well, let me just read it. He said, tea made with the peach meats or cherry stone meats made into a syrup is an excellent article to restore patients after having been reduced by that disease and to promote digestion. He's basically talking to someone who's had dysentery, who's really worn down and weak, and this was used sort of as a restorative tonic, but to also keep things not cramping. I mean, that's, stop those peristaltic contractions. He said it's good for canker and all complaints of the bowels. So these can be used as medicine and are diuretic and very soothing to the entire urinary apparatus in case of renal and cystic irritation and inflammation. That means it's good especially for really serious bladder infections that cause cystitis. This was one he recommended. Let's see. Oh, okay. Native plants, native healing. Now, this was the Muskogee book. The Muskogee Way, I believe, is the subtitle of it. It says the same chemical actions are found in white, black, or sweet river birch trees. It has a layer of bark that resembles the skin, but the inner bark is more medicinal. It is best gathered in the wintertime. He goes on and talks about that. The signature of the plant is the skin, like uh, the skin-like layers of the bark is basically what he's saying. The oils found in the bark are very similar to those in the human skin. That makes it very soothing to rough, itchy, and sensitive skin. When made into a water-based wash, it's extremely good used externally to ease skin problems. The Muskogee use it for any kind of rash, dermatitis, insect bite or sting, sunburns, hemorrhoids, all kinds of stuff. And he also says a mixture of sassafras, ginseng, and birch is used for muscle regrowth, even where the muscle has been severed. So that's incredibly interesting, and I would recommend you get that book, Native Plants, Native Healing, The Muskogee Way. What was his name? Titchmont? I can't remember. You'll find that one pretty easily. And Tismau Crow, that's his name, Tismau Crow. And he talks a little bit about that. That's a really unique herbal property that Muskogee found and used. Uh, Officially, this plant is anti-inflammatory, diuretic, and laxative. It's good for fevers. Again, it has that aspirin-like wintergreen quality. It is germicidal, but the beer made from birch, especially the sap, and then flavored with the twigs, was so incredibly popular in early America. This is one of the plants that people absolutely lived on. Amy Stewart wrote in The Drunken Botanist. She said, starting in the 17th century, several scientists wrote of the use of birch sap in medicinal or purely recreational liquors. The Flemish physician Johann Baptista von Helmont wrote that the birch sap could be collected in the spring and poured into ale after the greatest settlement of its boiling or working. It means, okay, if you've ever done any fermentation, it's the yeast eats the sugar, it creates carbon dioxide, and while there's still sugar in there, it will foam. So he's saying after it finishes boiling or working, after the foam dies down, he recommends this naturally fermented sap as a treatment for ailments of the kidneys, urinary tracts, and bowels. But I think Euell Gibbons, you remember Euell Gibbons, Stalking the Wild Asparagus, he gives us the best recipe for birch beer. And apparently this was somewhat based on George Washington's recipe. He says measure 4 quarts of finely cut twigs of sweet birch into the bottom of a 5-gallon pot. In a large kettle, stir in 1 gallon of honey into 4 gallons of birch sap and boil this mixture for 10 minutes. Then pour over the chopped twigs. When cool, strain and remove the now expended twigs and return the liquid to the crock. Spread 1 cake of soft yeast and on a slice of toasted rye bread. Now this is interesting. This is what they did in a lot of old beer recipes. They would put the yeast on a piece of toast and let it float until the bread had started absorbing the sugary liquid. And that gave the yeast a little more nutrition. It's an old way of doing things. And before then, they would actually just put bread on there, hoping there was still enough yeast that hadn't been killed off by cooking. Whether or not that worked, I can't really say, but the tradition remained that you would put your yeast on top of bread and sit on top of the beer. He says this will usually take about a week, but it depends somewhat on the temperature. Bottle the beer and cap it tightly, store it in a dark place, and serve it cold before meals after the weather gets hot. It has a reputation for stimulating the appetite, but more than a glass or two at a time is likely to stimulate other things because this beer has a kick like a mule. So, I've told you how to make a nice strong beer out of this, how to use it as a cure for rheumatism, arthritis, swollen joints, achy muscles, fevers, all kinds of urinary complaints and bowel complaints. Excellent, excellent medicinal tree. And you could probably find a birch just about anywhere you live. And the more I look at it, I actually think these are all insects and not wild yeast. So I misspoke on that. But anyway, at least I caught it in time to correct it. Y'all have a great week, and I will see you next time. And don't forget, look up because some of our most medicinal plants are the trees over our heads.